and must not be confounded with the Order of the Illuminati of Bavaria that came into existence 22 years later. It is by this terrible and formidable sect that the gigantic plan of world revolution was worked out under the leadership of the man whom Louis Blanc has truly described as the profoundest conspirator that has ever existed. Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati, was born on 6th of February 1748. His early training by the Jesuits had inspired him with a violent dislike for their order, and he turned with eagerness to the subversive teaching of the French philosophers and the anti-Christian doctrines of the Manichaeans. It is said that he was also indoctrinated into Egyptian occultism by a certain merchant of unknown origin from Jutland named Kurlma, who was travelling about Europe during the year 1771 in search of adepts. Footnote, indication, and there's some references below. Weishaupt, who combined the practical German brain with the cunning of Machiavelli, spent no less than 5 years thinking out a plan by which all these ideas should be reduced to a system, and at the end of this period he had evolved the following theory. Civilization. Weishaupt held with Rousseau was a mistake. It had developed along the wrong lines, and to this cause all the inequalities of human life were due. Man, he declared, is fallen from the condition of liberty and equality, the state of pure nature. He is under subordination and civil bondage arising from the vices of man. This is the fall and original sin. The first step towards regaining a state of primitive liberty consisted in learning to do without these things. Man must divest himself of all the trappings laid on him by civilization and return to nomadic conditions. Even clothing, food, and fixed abodes should be abandoned. So what is he saying here? Basically, be a wanderer of the desert regions and have nothing, no clothes, no food, no residence, etc. Necessarily, therefore, all arts and sciences must be abolished. Do the common sciences afford real enlightenment, real human happiness? Or are they not rather children of necessity, the complicated needs of a state contrary to nature, the invention of vain and empty brains? Moreover, are not many of the complicated needs of civilization the means of retaining in power the mercantile class, Kaufmannschaft, which if allowed, any authority in the government would inevitably end by exercising the most formidable and despotic power? You will see it dictating the law to the universe, and from it will perhaps ensue the independence of one part of the world, the slavery of the other. For he is a master who can arouse and foresee, stifle, satisfy, or lessen needs, and who can do that better than tradesmen? Once released from the bondage civilization imposes, man must then be self-governing. Why? Asked Weishaupt. Should it be impossible to the human race to attain its highest perfection, the capacity for governing itself? For this reason, not only should kings and nobles be abolished, but even a republic should not be tolerated, and the people should be taught to do without any controlling authority, any law or any civil code. In order to make this system a success, it would be necessary only to inculcate in man a just and steady morality, and since Weishaupt professed to share Rousseau's belief in the inherent goodness of human nature, this would not be difficult, and society might then go on peaceably in a state of perfect liberty and equality. For since the only real obstacle to human perfection lay in the restraints imposed on man by artificial conditions of life, the removal of these must inevitably restore him to his primitive virtue. Man is not bad, except as he is made by arbitrary morality. He is bad because religion, the state, and bad examples pervert him. It was necessary, therefore, to root out from his mind all ideas of a hereafter, all fear or retribution for evil deeds, and to substitute for these superstitions the religion of reason. When at least reason becomes the religion of men, then will the problem be solved. After deliverance from the bondage of religion, the loosening of all social ties must follow. Both family and national life must cease to exist, so as to make of the human race one good and happy family. The origins of patriotism and the love of kindred are thus described by Weishaupt and the directions given to his hierophants for the instruction of initiates. At the moment when men united themselves into nations, they ceased to recognize themselves under a common name. Nationalism or national love took the place of universal love. With the division of the globe and its countries, benevolence restricted itself behind boundaries that it was never again to transgress. Then it became a virtue to spread out at the expense of those who did not happen to be under our dominion. Then, in order to attain this goal, it became permissible to despise foreigners and to deceive and to defend them. This virtue was called patriotism. That man was called a patriot who, whilst just towards his own people, was unjust to others, who blinded himself to the merits of foreigners and took for perfections the vices of his own country. So one sees that patriotism gave birth to localism, to the family spirit, and finally to egoism. Thus the origin of states or governments of civil society was the seed of discord, and patriotism found its punishment in itself. Diminish, do away with this love of country, and men will once more learn to know and love each other as men. There will be no more partiality. The ties between hearts will unroll and extend. And footnote indication, and it's got down the bottom here. Nachtrag, original Schriften, the Illuminati In, Zweit Abteilung, page 65. In these words, the purest expression of internationalism as it is expounded today, Weishaupt displayed an ignorance of primeval conditions of life as profound as that of Rousseau. The idea of Paleolithic man, whose skeleton is usually exhumed with a flint instrument or other weapon of warfare grasped in its hand, passing his existence in a state of universal love, is simply ludicrous. It was not, however, in his diatribes against civilization that Weishaupt surpassed Rousseau, but in the plan he devised for overthrowing it. Rousseau had merely paved the way for revolution. Weishaupt constructed the actual machinery of revolution itself. It was on the 1st of May 1776 that Weishaupt's 5 years of meditation resulted in his founding the secret society that he named after bygone philosophical systems, the Illuminati. Footnote indicator. And down the bottom it says, a German sect of this name professing Satanism with which Weishaupt's orders may have been connected existed in the 15th century. All the members were required to adopt classical names. Thus Weishaupt took that of Spartacus, the leader of an insurrection of slaves in ancient Rome, his principal ally. Herr von Schrak, privy councillor to the Prince von Salm, became Cato. The Marquis de Constanza, Diomedes, Massenhausen, Ajax, Hertel, Marius, the Baron von Schreckenstein, Muhammad, the Baron Mingenhofen, Silla, etc. In the same way, the names of places were changed to those celebrated in antiquity. Munich, the headquarters of the system, was to be known as Athens. Ingolstadt, the birthplace of Illuminism, as Ephesus, or to the adepts initiated into the inner mysteries of the order as Eleusis. Heidelberg as Utica, Bavaria as Achaia, Suabia as Pannonia, etc. For greater secrecy and correspondence, the word Illuminism was to be replaced by the cipher, looks like a circle and a dot, and the word lodge by a square. The calendar also was to be reconstructed in the months known by names suggestive of Hebrew origin, January as Dime, February as Benme, etc. For the letters of the alphabet, a complete code of figures was constructed, beginning with M as number 1 and working back to A and on to Z. The grades of the order were a combination of the grades of Freemasonry and the degrees belonging to the Jesuits. Weishaupt, as had already been said, detested the Jesuits, but recognizing the efficiency of their methods in acquiring influence over the minds of their disciples, he conceived the idea of adopting their system to his own purpose. He admired, says Abbe Baruel, the institutions of the founders of this order. He admired above all those laws, that regime of the Jesuits, which under one head made so many men dispersed all over the universe tend towards the same object. He felt that one might imitate their methods whilst proposing to himself views diametrically opposed. He said to himself, "What all these men have done for altars and empires, why should I not do against altars and empires? By the attraction of mysteries, of legions, of adepts, why should not I destroy in the dark what they erect in the light of day?" Weishaupt at first entertained hopes of persuading other ex-Jesuits to join the society, but having succeeded in enlisting only 2, he became more than ever the enemy of their order, the Jesuit order, and injunctions were given to his adepts to admit no Jews or Jesuits to the sect of the Illuminati unless by special permission. Ex-Jesuits, he wrote emphatically, must be avoided as the plague. It was in the training of adepts that Weishaupt showed his profound subtlety. Proselytes were not to be admitted at once to the secret aim of Illuminism, but initiated step by step into the higher mysteries, and the great caution was to be exercised not to reveal to the novice doctrines that might be likely to revolt him or repulse him. For this purpose the initiators must acquire the habit of talking backwards and forwards so as not to commit themselves. One must speak, Weishaupt explained, to the superiors of the order, sometimes in one way, sometimes in another, so that our real purpose should remain impenetrable to our inferiors. Thus, to certain novices, the novices ecosays, the Illuminati must profess to disapprove of religions and demonstrate the advantages of proceeding by peaceful methods towards the attainment of world domination. But to the Minerval, the plan of world power must not be revealed. On the contrary, one of the opening sentences in the initiation for this grade runs as follows. After 2 years' reflection, experience, intercourse, reading of the graduated writings and information, you will necessarily have formed the impression that the final aim of our society is nothing less than to win power and riches, to undermine secular or religious government, and to obtain the mastery of the world. Qui s'excuse indeed. The passage then goes on to say vaguely that this is not the case, and that the order only demands of the initiate the fulfillment of his obligations. Nor must antagonism to religion be admitted. On the contrary, Christ was to be represented as the first author of Illuminism, whose secret mission was to restore to men the original liberty and equality they had lost in the fall, and Adam and Eve sinned. No one, the novice, should be told, paved so sure a way for liberty as our Grand Master Jesus of Nazareth. And if Christ exhorted his disciples to despise riches, it was in order to prepare the world for that community of goods that should do away with property. This device proved particularly successful not only with young novices, but with men of all ranks and ages. The most admirable thing of all, wrote Spartacus triumphantly to Cato, is that great Protestant and Reformed theologians, Lutherans and Calvinists, who belong to our order, really believe they see in it the true and genuine mind of the Christian religion. Oh man, what cannot you be brought to believe? By this means, as Philo, the Baron von Neig, later on pointed out, the order was able to tickle those who have a hankering for religion. It was not then until his admission to the higher grades that the adept was initiated into the real intentions of Illuminism with regard to religion. When he reached the grade of illuminated major or minor, of Scotch knight, epopter or priest, he was told the whole secret of the order in discourse by the initiator. So up here, you would think that, okay, this is the Roman Spartacus that fought in the arena, talking to someone called Cato, a philosopher, right? That's the trickiness of it, because they've taken these names, they've used these names as pseudos in replacement of their names, right? Okay, and it reads here, this discourse reads here, remember that from the first invitations which we have given you in order to attract you to us, we commenced by telling you that in the projects of our order there did not enter any designs against religion. You remember that such an assurance was given you when you were admitted into the ranks of our novices, and that it was repeated when you entered into our Minerval Academy. You remember with what art, with what simulated respect we have spoken to you of Christ and of his gospel, but in the grades of greater Illuminism, of Scotch knight, and of Weishaupt or priest, how we have to know to form from Christ's gospel that of our reason, and from its religion that of nature, and from religion, reason, morality, and nature. 2. Make the religion and morality of the rights of man, of equality, and of liberty. We have had many prejudices to overcome in you before being able to persuade you that the pretended religion of Christ was nothing else than the work of priests, of imposture, and of tyranny. If it be so with that religion, so much proclaimed and admired, what are we to think of other religions? Understand then that they all have the same fictions for their origin, that they are all equally founded on lying, error, chimera, and imposture. Behold our secret. If in order to destroy all Christianity, all religion, we have pretended to have the sole true religion, remember that the end justifies the means, and that the wise ought to take all the means to do good with the wicked, take all the means to do which the wicked take to do evil. Those which we have taken to deliver you, those which we have taken to deliver one day the human race from all religion, are nothing else than a pious fraud which we reserved to unveil one day in the grade of Magus or Philosopher illuminated. But all this was unknown to the novice, whose confidence being won by the assimilation of religion was enjoined to strict obedience. Amongst the questions put to him were the following: if you came to discover anything wrong or unjust to be done under the order, what line would you take? Will you and can you regard the good of the order as your own good? Will you give to our society the right of life and death? Do you bind yourself to absolute and unreserved obedience? And do you know the force of this undertaking? By way of warning as to the consequences of betraying the order, a forcible illustration was included in the ceremony of initiation. Taking a naked sword from the table, the initiator held the point against the heart of the novice with these words: if you are only a traitor and perjurer, learn that all our brothers are called upon to arm themselves against you. Do not hope to escape or to find a place of safety. Wherever you are, shame, remorse, and the rage of our brothers will pursue you and torment you to the innermost recesses of your entrails. It will thus be seen that the liberty vaunted by the leaders of the Illuminati had no existence, and that iron discipline was in reality the watchword of the order. A great point impressed upon the adepts, of which we shall see the importance later, was that they should not be known as Illuminati. This rule was particularly enforced in the case of those described as enrollers, and by way of attracting proselytes, they were further admonished to be reproachable. The superiors of the order are to be regarded as the most perfect and enlightened of men. They must not even permit any doubts on their infallibility. Therefore, to the enrollers it was said, apply yourselves to inward and outward perfection, but also apply yourselves to the art of counterfeit, of hiding and masking yourselves when observing others, so as to penetrate into their minds. Die Kunst zu erlernen, an der zu beobachten und auszuforschen. These precepts were summed up in the one phrase: keep silence, be perfect, mask yourselves. How far the founder of the order had himself attained perfection was subsequently revealed by the discovery of his papers, amongst which was found a letter from Weishaupt to Hertel in 1783, confessing that he had seduced his sister-in-law, and adding, I am therefore in danger of losing my honour and that reputation which gave me so much authority over our world. For a time this reputation for perfectibility was successfully maintained for the benefit of the members, who would have been revolted by a breach of morality, and only those likely to be attracted by it were to be allowed to know of the laxity permitted by the order. Women were also to be enlisted as Illuminati by being given hints of emancipation. And there's some references below. Through women, wrote Weishaupt, one may often work the best in the world. To insinuate ourselves with these and to win them over should be one of our cleverest studies. More or less they can all be led towards change by vanity, curiosity, sensuality and inclination. From this can one draw much profit for the good cause. This sex has a large part of the world in its hands. The female adepts were then to be divided into two classes, each with its own secret. The first to consist of virtuous women who would give an air of respectability to the order. The second of light women who would help to satisfy those brothers who have a penchant for pleasure. But the present utility of both classes would consist in providing funds for the society. Fools with money, whether men or women, were to be particularly welcomed, because a fool and his money are soon parted. Obviously. So it's quoted, right? These good people, wrote Spartacus to Ajax and Cato. This is Weishaupt writing to two other guys, Niger and the other guy. Swell our numbers and fill our money box. Set yourself to work. These gentlemen must be made to nibble at the bait, but let us beware of telling them our secrets. This sort of people must always be made to believe that the grade they have reached is the last. Footnote indication, and there's some references down the bottom. The sect was thus to consist of Weishaupt and the adepts who had been initiated into the inner mysteries, and besides these of a large following of simple and credulous people who could be kept in ignorance of the real goal towards which they were being driven. Weishaupt's method for obtaining proselytes is thus shown by a diagram in the code of the Illuminati. Looks like some sort of pyramid scheme. Reproduced from, it's got it here in German, page 60, a reference. Naturally, the least educated classes offer a wide field for Weishaupt's activities. It is also necessary, runs the code of the Illuminati, to gain the common people, thus gemeine folk, to our order. The great means to their end is influence in the schools. One can also succeed now by liberty, now by striking an effect, and at other times by humiliating oneself, by making oneself popular, or enduring with an air of patience prejudices that one can gradually root out later. Espionage formed a large part of Weishaupt's program. The adepts, known as the insinuating brothers, were enjoined to assume the role of observers and reporters. Every person shall be made a spy on another and on all around him. Friends, relations, enemies, those who are indifferent, all without exception, shall be the object of his inquiries. He shall attempt to discover their strong side and their weak, their passions, their prejudices, their connections, above all their actions, in a word, the most detailed information about them. All this is to be entered on tablets that the insinuant carries with him, and from which he shall draw up reports to be sent in twice a month to his superiors, so that the order may know which are the people in each town and village to whom it can look for support.